Are you wanting to know how to crush the Microstakes tournaments? Here's a few I played on GG Poker to show you how. All the tournaments in this video will be from stakes $3 and below. Once you make some money from a free roll or you deposit a small sum, you should start your journey playing these games. Try to play as many tables as you can comfortably manage and grind up that bankroll. As discussed in previous videos, the goal is to play simple and solid, not to slow play, and to definitely not pay off the nitty players. We have two interesting hands straight away. On the bottom left, we see bet small with our open-ender and call a raise. When we hit the straight on the turn, I want to drive the action myself. I have a good hand, and so I want the pot to be bigger. Players at the lower stakes will struggle to fold on the turn here with any pair or draw, but may often check them back if checked to. Therefore, we just want to bet ourselves. They may even just shove a draw as our opponent did here. Just bet your strong hands, drive the action yourself. On the top right, we pick up 10s, 25 big blinds deep, with a bounty on our heads, at the Microstakes. This is a monster, and we're just looking to get the money in as best we can. We could just shove, but I prefer going a bit smaller in hopes of getting calls or shoves from hands which would otherwise fold to a shove. Maybe hands like 9-8 suited or pocket fives. We go big enough that we're never folding post flop anyway, so we just get a little extra money from hands which we're ahead of. On the flop, we could do a variety of things. The board is so dry and we have so little left in relation to the pot that we're never folding, so we're just looking to get them to put in as much money as possible with weaker hands. I could check, but I think betting one big blind generates a little more action in general. The turn is the same story. The queen is not ideal and can have hit one of them, but the goal is still to not fold and to try to force them to put money in with weaker hands. And the river, we're just looking to get the rest of the money in. He gets there with fives, but he could just as easily have had pocket threes or pocket sixes, and I doubt he's folding the river as the hand played out. The next interesting hand is on the top left with ace-king. Similar to the tens, we could just shove, but I think we can get slightly more EV from going non-all-in and pulling in some hands like king-jack, 10-9 suited, etc. The flop is not ideal for our hand, but we have so little left that we're not folding. The question is just how to get the most money from weaker holdings. We could bet one big blind, but I think with so little left, it makes some sense to check and hope he occasionally shoves random holdings like king-6 suited or maybe ace-5 suited. He has aces this time, but we were always destined to lose this pot. All we did was maximize our winnings the time he has those weaker holdings. On the top left, we now have 10-8 suited. Limping or raising both seem reasonable pre-flop here. The big blind seems fairly tight with a VPIP of 23, so I like limping, assuming he won't raise our limp too aggressively. We hit top pair, and so it's time to get some good value. Unfortunately though, he folds, but this is definitely a board where he can continue very, very often. Now we have ace-9 suited. It is a profitable shove, but not too profitable, and I prefer to min-raise and keep my opponents in with their dominated holdings. We flop an ace, and so again, it's simply a matter of how we can get the money in as advantageously as possible. I slightly prefer a small bet to a check here. On the turn, we could check so as to catch bluffs on the river from hands such as 4x or diamonds, but the downside to this is that it may be harder to get paid by a hand like a 5 or pocket 3s on the river, and flush draws may just call the shove on the turn anyway. He ends up turning a pair with 8-4 offsuit, which shows one of the benefits to min-raising pre-flop instead of shoving. The opponent's hand would almost certainly have folded if we shoved pre-flop. By min-raising, we allowed him to come along, pick up a gut shot, and then pick up a pair, but he was always behind in the hand. With pocket sevens, we have a hand which is very strong, but very vulnerable to being outflopped. For that reason, I elect to open to a slightly larger size. If they fold hands like Queen 8 or 9-8, then great, and if they call them, then that's fine too. The flop is great for our hand, and we're up against a looser player. Once again, we're just trying to maximise our value. I may go slightly smaller versus a tighter player, but half pot seems good versus someone like this. I imagine they need very little encouragement to continue with ace high or a hand like king jack. We could definitely bet ourselves small here on the turn, and if we had less in our stack, then I would. As played, we're check 2 on the river, which is a reasonable sign of weakness, and I think our hand warrants a tiny bit of value. I imagine most of his better hands would lead the river, so I'm just trying to get called by hands such as 4x, ace high, and hands like that. I'm trying to induce some raises as well. A few hands going on here. On the bottom left, we make a tight, but I think good fold versus a double barrel from under the gun. On the bottom right, we tried to get value unsuccessfully with aces. And on the top right, we again go for a non-all-in sizing, trying to maximise the value from our hand. You can see why we do it in this hand. We end up getting it in against sixes and, bizarrely, 9-6 suited. In this hand on the top middle, we open Queen Jack offsuit pre-flop and get 2 callers. On a Queen high drawy board, I'm looking to get a decent bit of value. The 6 turn changes very little, and so I try to get more value, but unfortunately this time he folds. Again on the top middle, we call a raise multi-way with King 10 suited. After the flop checks around, I feel like my hand is best the majority of the time, so I bet and I get called. The river is terrible for my hand and my chances of getting called, so I just check behind, but I would have been value betting most rivers. In this Queen 10 suited hand on the bottom right, we call pre-flop and call the flop. With position and a likely very sticky opponent, I prefer to just call the flop rather than raise here. We hit the nuts on the turn and he bets again. He's showing quite a bit of strength and likely has some sort of a hand which he's going to struggle to fold. I therefore raise the turn, trying to set up the pot in such a way as he will be very tempted to call my shove on the river. 37 bigs into 57 bigs on the river is an amount that it will be very difficult to fold to with any of his holdings like ace king, ace queen, or even ace 10. He does eventually call with ace king, and we win a nice pot. We pick up tens on the bottom middle table, again going for a slightly oversized open due to the strength and vulnerability of the hand. On the flop, we could check or bet one big blind as we did. Always good to give our opponents rope to shove a hand they may otherwise check back. As always, if you have any questions related to this topic or any questions at all, I offer a free coaching service in the VIP Grinders Discord server. Feel free to come in and ask anything you like. I look forward to seeing you there.